Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, message number 294, February 9, 2023. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading by the votes indicated. Senate File 2, Wyoming Telecommunications Act sunset date, ayes 61, noes 1. Message number 295, Senate File 4, North American Industry Classification System Amendments, ayes 62. Message number 296, Senate File 23, Treatment Courts Transferred to Judicial Branch, ayes 42, noes 20. Message number 297, Senate File 77, Public Works Apprenticeship Programs Repeals, ayes 61, noes 1. Message number 298. Mr. President, the following bills passed on third reading in an amended form by the votes indicated, and the House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting listed amendments. Message number 298, Senate File 13, Bar and Grill Liquor License Phase Out. Message number 299, Senate File 48, Education, Suspension, and Expulsion Model Policies. Ayes 44, noes 18. Message number 300, Senate File number 78, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools. Ayes 62. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting listed amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Reports from standing committees.
February 9, 2023, Mr. Presidential Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 86 engrossed, Disclosure of Private Cryptographic Keys, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman. Mr. Presidential Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 5 engrossed, Voter Registry List, Voter ID, and Absentee Ballots, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Landon, Scott. No, Senator Barlow. Senator Case, Chairman.
Thank you. Introduction of House bills. House Bill 42, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 42 engrossed, Off-Road Recreational Vehicle Operation, sponsored by the Transportation Committee. Passed the House, ayes 56, noes 5, excused 1.
House Bill 42 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. All right, so we've got a special one here. I'm going to read a proclamation, and we've got a speech. Everybody needs to pay attention. 67th Legislature of the State of Wyoming recognizes Owen Fink. A joint resolution of undersigned members of the 67th Legislature of the State of Wyoming recognizing Owen Fink for his outstanding dedication and leadership in academics, civics, service, and statesmanship. Whereas Mr. Fink, an impressive resident of Powell and an outstanding honor roll student at Powell High School, has consistently excelled in academics, extracurricular pursuits, and civic involvement, and whereas Mr. Fink has enthusiastically participated in Skills USA, First Tech Challenge, Dano Youth Camp, Powell Art Guild, and Solve for Tomorrow, and whereas Mr. Fink has honorably served as a Powell Ignition Program Mentor, Student Council Class Representative, National Honor Society member, Powell Chamber of Commerce Ambassador, and a member of the Theater Club and Zero Hour Weight Training. And whereas Mr. Fink, while excelling in high school, has successfully completed numerous classes at Northwest College, and whereas Mr. Fink has consistently contributed to his community through service as a volunteer for Hour of Code Highway Cleanup, Powell Valley Health Summer Food Program, Backpacks for Blessings, and Powell Chamber of Commerce. And whereas Mr. Fink has shown immense promise as a future statement as Wyoming's representative of the U.S. Senate Page Program, attending U.S. Senate Page School, and now serving as a page for the Wyoming Senate during the 2023 general session. And whereas the success of the state of Wyoming, the strength of our communities, and the future of our country depend on the dedication of young people like Mr. Fink, who devote their time, skills, and talents for the betterment of our communities, our state, and our world. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the undersigned members of the 67th Legislature of the state of Wyoming that on behalf of the state of Wyoming, we hereby congratulate and honor Mr. Fink for his outstanding record of volunteer service, peer leadership, and community spirit, and extend best wishes for his continued success and happiness. Signed by all the members. We're going to have a speech from Mr. Fink, and we want to do a huge thank you. What a great job.
Honorable Senators, staff, and fellow Wyomingites, first and foremost, I would like to thank this body for your adherence to democracy, civility, accountability, and true constituent representation. I would also like to thank this body for debating, for questioning, and for conversing about all the legislation over these last 2 weeks. Finally, I would also like to thank Senator Larson for sponsoring me for this amazing opportunity. After serving as a Senate page at the federal level, I found it refreshing to witness how legislators are truly meant to legislate by watching you here in this chamber. Thank you all again for your kindness and for this amazing opportunity. I truly appreciate what you are doing for Wyoming, and I am optimistic about the future of this great state. Long live Wyoming, and long live the Wyoming legislature. Thank you.
All right, just a little bit for your edification. 717 bill drafts were requested this year. 497 total bills, resolutions were numbered and jacketed. 344 individual bills, 153 committee bills. 960 amendments were requested so far to date. 690 of them were numbered. So 300 House bills were numbered for introduction, 25 not considered, 275 kind of went through the next one down. So bills that passed the original House, 121 House bills came over here, 139 Senate files went the other way for a total of 260 total bills. 115 individual bills passed the two bodies, committee bills, and 145 individual bills. Got 260 bills total, so we're pretty well through them. You guys have done yeoman's work. I think Senator Hicks, we all know, is going to have a pretty good announcement for a reward for your good work. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business. Consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President,
Senator Beitman.
Mr. President, without objection, I would ask that House Bill 118, Volunteer Firefighter Pension Funding, be re-referred from Committee 3 Revenue to Committee Number 2 Appropriations.
Without objection, so ordered. Oh, got a couple more committee reports to read in real quick, I'm told. Sorry, Senator Hicks.
February 9, 2023, Mr. President, to Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 100 engrossed, Acquisition Value Study, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 213, engrossed, Energy Production Inventory Exemption. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
Senator Beitman needs to, I'll read it in first. Wait 1 second, Senator. House Bill 100, first reading of the House file. It is, yep. Okay, now we're ready for it to be referred. My bad, I'm learning.
Mr. President, we have another re-referral for you. House Bill 229 has an appropriation, and I'd ask that it be re-referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations, without objection.
Hasn't been read in. We've got to
Hasn't
get
been
read
read
in.
in?
Now you can do 100.
Oh, 100 has an appropriation. Oh, that one does. Mr. President, without objection, I would ask that House Bill 100 be re-referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations.
Without objection, so ordered. Do we have another report to read in now? We're done, okay. Very good. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I'm finally getting on my game here. We're at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay.
No?
Motion is carried. Senator Brennan. Mark Quiner, who I talked about for lunch, is now. Hey, Mark, how are you? Come on up here. Actually, we're gonna do a cheat out of committee of the whole. Come up and tell him real quick, Mark. Gonna give him a free pass. Mark's old LSO and a great guy. So you get something no one gets much. The mic is yours for a free sales pitch of 3 minutes or less.
Ready, go. Thank you all. It's great to see you. Nice to be back with so many good friends. And just wanted to say hi. I'm your new liaison for NCSL. So if you need anything, please reach out. I think you probably know how to get me. But it sure is nice to be back and see so many friendly faces and people that taught me what ethics are. And I'm the director of the Center for Ethics in Government now at NCSL. And I learned it right here. So cowboy ethics still work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Sure is nice to see you all.
Thanks so much. Brendan, you're in control here.
Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill. Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, you have 6 bills between you and a 3-day weekend. So gauge your debate. The last one for the day is the ominous water bill. So gauge your debate, folks.
Let's thank the Majority Floor Leader for the day off.
Do you have it? Okay. All right, so the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 7. The reading clerk will please read it in.
House Bill 7 engrossed, Underage Marriage Amendment, sponsored by Representative Swanitzer, an act relating to domestic relations, was referred to Committee number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, and Scott. Excused, Senator Landon. Senator Case, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Case?
Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a due pass recommendation. It's moved, and it is House Bill 7. And Madam Chairman, it's an engrossed bill, but the only difference between this bill and our white bill is that the effective date was moved to immediately. What this bill does, Madam Chairwoman, is to make the legal age for marriage in Wyoming 18, although ages at 17 and 16 are allowed if the judge approves it and there's a consent given by other folks in the partnership. So marriages below the age of 16 are void. So there would not be a way to legally marry a 15, 14, anything lower than 16. And 16 and 17 would require intervention of the court, permission of the judge, and the verbal consent, if present, and written consent, if absent, of the father, mother, guardian, or person having the care and control of the person 16 or 17 years of age. That's the gist of the bill. Before, it was always that you had to go to the court, but there was no legal bottom. We're one of 8 states that allows for marriage under the age of 16, and Madam Chairwoman, this would fix that. First time I got married, Madam Chairwoman, we were both 19, and I'll tell you that was too young. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions. The only difference between this and the white bill was the effective date, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I looked at this bill, I was trying to figure out what's going on, and I really can't figure out what's going on. I know there are, I'd ask the body to resist this change and vote no on the bill. There are communities such as our Amish, Hutterites, and Mennonites here in Wyoming that would be in violation of this law if it was to pass. Many of them, their young women, are brought up to want to be wives and mothers at a younger age. And upon getting some data from someone who paid attention to the committee this morning, they mentioned that the sponsor of the bill testified that this is kind of a keeping up with the Joneses type of thing. We're just doing this because other states have arbitrarily changed their age restrictions on marriage. The testimony also was filled with hypothetical harms. For instance, if a minor wants to divorce, it says she can't hire a lawyer, but we know now maybe a male can't hire a lawyer. A minor might be coerced into a marriage. Minors are not mature enough to marry, like some say. All of these cautions are already covered by current law that requires a judge to investigate whether or not a person is being coerced into marriage, such as sex trafficking. And if that person is mature enough and legally ready to consent to marriage, a judge will find that out. Also, it kind of takes the right out of the hands of the parent to say whether they believe their child is mature enough to marry. A lot of times with young ladies, they get pregnant early, 13, 14, 15 years old, and the mom and dad may feel they are mature enough to marry and move on. So with that in mind, I'd like the body to resist this, and thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm against this bill. My parents, after World War II, got married. They were both 17. I think my mom had just turned 17. They were married for 65 years, raised a big family, happily married all that time. I know this doesn't relate, but my wife was 19. I was 20, and we've been married 48 years happily. And so I'm against this bill.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On for the bill. There's two concepts to marriage that I think are important to realize, and one of those is with regard to a legal contract. So a marriage is a marriage contract under statute, and the concept from the statutory contract side has a lot to do with the need for amending this. And in fact, I'm not certain that 16 or 17-year-old is really enough. It's the idea from the legal standpoint that somebody that's under 18 is allowed to enter into a contract, and a very significant legal contract with regard to marriage, when they don't have independent authority to engage in that contract. And so effectively, you have the parents of the individual entering into a contract on their behalf, which is something that's done from time to time, but typically it's actually the parent that is engaged in entering into that contract rather than the child, and then that contract would be potentially transferred. It's very unique with regard to the marriage contract that it is the individual that the parents effectively choose on their behalf. You will enter into this contract, but then it's legally binding on them. It's a bit of a nuance. Madam Chairman, it's not to say you can't still have the religious contract in place. The religious contract can be entirely separate from the state. You don't have to apply to the state to have the marriage license from a religious standpoint, a religious contract. But from the legal standpoint, from a contract, from the state's perspective, you do. So when you think about the choices that we allow somebody under 18 to make, independent from their parents, from contract law, from statute, it certainly makes sense that we would raise that default position to be 18, where you're independently legally able to enter into a contract on your own behalf. Again, this isn't entering into a change in statute to follow along. This is good practice and recognizes that until an individual reaches the age of majority to make their own decisions on their own behalf, they should not be forced into a marriage by their parents or by anyone else, for that matter. I understand that we like parental choice. I understand that we really support a parent's choice, but the idea that a parent can make the choice on behalf of their child for whom they can marry, where they cannot then easily get out of that later on without breaking that contract, is potentially a bridge too far. So again, nothing says that they can't be engaged, nothing says that they can't have a ceremonial wedding, anything along those lines. But from a legal contract standpoint, the individual should reach the age of majority, which we've set at 18. Whether that's right or wrong, that's where it's set, and this is consistent with that, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chairman, I'm just trying to understand the need for the bill. I understand what the bill does, but do we have a whole bunch of underage people that are entering contracts without in the courts? I just haven't heard that this is an issue in my district anywhere. In fact, I've never heard about it as a problem anywhere. So I'm just wondering, what issue are we resolving with this? Is there something out there that's going on in other counties that's not happening in Carbon and Sweetwater that I represent? Because I've never heard of this as a problem, Madam Chairman.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to maybe answer or just give a comment on my good colleague from Laramie mentioning a child being forced to into marriage. There's nothing preventing a minor from seeking intervention already. In our statutes, 22101B, it gives that child the right to have their the marriage be voidable if solemnized and they were forced into marriage. So we already have that in statute, Madam Chair.
Senator Case.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I'll try to answer some questions. So to my good friend from the Bighorn Basin and the kind gentleman who talks about the marriage of 17-year-olds in his family history, wouldn't prevent that at all. Wouldn't prevent that at all. The judge could approve a marriage of 17-year-olds. It'd require, basically the parents to approve the marriage, and that would be permitted. 16-year-old, exact same thing. What this absolutely does prevent, Madam Chairwoman, is marriages of 15 years old or younger. 15 years old or younger. Now think about the situation that's playing out. Think about sexual predation, Madam Chairwoman. Think about our laws about rape. And if there, you can have consensual sex between people, but if there's more than 4 years difference and one of the individuals is a minor, that's a sexual crime. And it can be of higher order under some circumstances. So imagine a situation where you have men that are, it's typically men and younger women. It's not always that true, but that's typically it. So you have a predatory relationship between a man and a woman that is 15 years old or younger. 15 years old or younger. They can, now under our current law, they can come to Wyoming and solemnize their marriage and disguise the crime of sexual predation and rape. That's the trouble when you're becoming the last state to allow for very young marriages. You attract undesirable people. My good friend, my very good friend from Carbon County asked, is this a problem? I haven't heard of it. We do hear of it once in a while. There were at least 20 instances involving 16 and 17-year-olds last year, Madam Chairwoman. They are going to research the statistics at Vital Statistics about people younger than 16, but indeed it definitely has happened. Sometimes we collect those statistics. You have situations where the man is 30 years old, 28 years old, and the woman, the girl, is 15 years old. I'm going to submit to you, Madam Chairwoman, that's not what we want to attract. And as other states close down their ability to get married in that situation, Wyoming becomes a loophole state. Now look, still can get married at 16, still can get married at 17, just got to have more of a commitment from the families. And they've got to appear before the judge. So I definitely support this, Madam Chairwoman. I think if you think it through, you're going to realize it's a good policy. And with regards to, it was mentioned about various religious communities in Wyoming that we have, Madam Chairwoman. The testimony in the committee that one of those religious communities, and I think it would be the largest religious community that we have in Wyoming, I don't know how to describe it, and I want to be very positive, but kind of a closed community, and without using a proper name, but I think you know what I'm getting at, I hope so, that they also support the 18-year-old, and that is their practice. So I don't think this is in great conflict with any of those communities that we're very glad to have in Wyoming. So, we only had one person testify against this in committee, and it was for religious reasons. And I was not persuaded by that testimony. I don't believe any of the other committee members were. The rest of the people that testified from numerous aspects support this bill. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Sensing you guys are ready for the question. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 7, say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The chair is in doubt. Those in favor, please stand. All those opposed say, please stand. 15 to 12. House Bill 7 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 15. The clerk will please read that in.
House Bill 15, County Authority to Dissolve Museum Boards Clarification, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to counties, was referred to Committee Number 6, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Guru, Jones, and Schuler. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move that the Committee of the Whole, when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 15 do pass. And with that, I would call on Senator Baldwin to discuss the bill.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I bring in House Bill 15. This is a pretty straightforward, simple bill. Some of you will remember we passed legislation recently about county commissioners dissolving district boards. We seem to have had a little bit of an oversight, it seems, and this bill aims to correct some of that unintended consequence, if you will. What we're doing is this bill takes away or clarifies, making them not having the authority to dissolve archaeological, geological, or historical museums. It seems that a lot of these museums have donated products, they have donated items, they have a lot of donated money. And the question is, if they dissolve these, then where does the funds or where do all these things go? And this bill aims to take away that authority to dissolve those and have a better means to deal with those than just have them dissolve the issue. And that pretty much is the bill, fellow senators. It's pretty straightforward.
All right. You have heard that. All of those in favor of Senator, sorry. Well, Senator Beitman and then Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just question, if the county can't do it, then how do they dissolve? What's the process? If
Senator Kolb.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. As being a past county commissioner, the Board of County Commissioners has the authority to create these boards. I think it's a false narrative to say that they would throw away said artifacts in the front street for the garbage pickup. I have never heard of anyone acting so irresponsibly. I think if we give the authority for boards of county commissioners to create a board, they should have the authority to dissolve said board if situations changes in that county. And I have all the faith in the world that they will not throw away artifacts, whatever they may be. I can tell you factually in Sweetwater County that we had mishandled items in the museum that were not cared for properly. So even under the best of conditions, that didn't work very well. So I trust the Board of County Commissioners. If they are allowed to create, they should be able to dismantle. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you very much. And I will answer part of that question, and I will ask for a lifeline. This is a judiciary bill from the interim, so perhaps somebody from that interim committee can help me out here. And I believe the intention was that by meeting with the county commissioners, but not giving that absolute authority to dissolve that, by meeting with the board, having more of an in-depth discussion rather than just dissolve. And we were told that this has never happened, actually, in the state of Wyoming, that none of these to this point have been dissolved, that it hasn't happened. This is more of a precautionary measure. But I would certainly ask for any conversation that happened in the interim to that judiciary committee, if there's anyone here. Go ahead.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I actually asked that question about what happens if, let's say, if a couple board members move away, maybe one doesn't come, and, all of a sudden your board kind of dwindles down. Is that a good time to dissolve a board? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And basically, what I was told is, from the county representative that was there, is that they would just go ahead and add more people and continue with the board. So the county commissioners still have, the oversight of the board. The bottom line is they just wanted to have an extra layer there of, supervision to make sure that many of these artifacts that are donated by private donors, even though they're under the auspices of the county, they may be in a county building, that's correct. But they just want to make sure that there's a little more leeway for those museum directors to be able to, if they need to, dissolve. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As your new chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I would certainly offer to do some homework and chase this down. As we make that transition to our new committees, sometimes these bills get out here on the floor with not a lot of knowledge by your new committee. I appreciated the Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee taking this bill from the president and working it through the process. If it clears the hurdle today, I will do a little bit of homework and get some information back to you as best I can. So thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, and I think the crux of the issue, and I'm not sure, but hopefully we can find this out by second reading. I don't think county commissioners establish museum districts. And so consequently, those districts go to the voters, and they're a creation of the voters. It's not like normal appointed county commissioners boards. I don't know that for a fact, but I know we've had several petitions in Carbon County to create museum districts. I was trying to look up the procedures here, Madam Chairman, and there may be two different forms, but I am aware of the one that has to be a petition of a number of voters that own a certain amount of property. Then it goes on the ballot once they achieve those petitions. Now, those petitions may have to be submitted to the county commissioners. But if in fact they are a voter-initiated board with an elected board through a general election, I think it would probably be appropriate not to have the commissioners dissolve that board. But that's really the question I think we need to find out, Madam Chairman, before second reading.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, it is not an elected board. It is a board formed by the Board of County Commissioners. They appoint said board members by the Board of County Commissioners. So all the property is owned, in fact, by the Board of County Commissioners of that county. And they have the absolute authority to appoint the board members on the board. So it's not elected, just to be clear about it. It's not some elected district or anything, because I would agree that shouldn't be dissolved. But we go back to the fact that it is created by the Board of County Commissioners. I think maybe if there's a process, maybe we could talk about it on second reading, that we could in fact maybe have a longer process for input. That may be something that sounds amenable to me, but there is a process for dismantling. It's in the statute where you have to give notice. It just doesn't happen like in a meeting and they dissolve the board. But this is different than some of the things, because there are in fact important artifacts there that need to be handled and probably moved off to other places for their safekeeping. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Question. All those in favor of Senator Senator Landon.
So, Madam Chairman, thank you. I apologize for getting up late, but I did receive a little note that indicates that this is a technical correction. If that allies a few fears and it does get the second reading, I assure you we'll try to find a little more information that we can share. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, all those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 15, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? House Bill 15 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 147.
House Bill 147 engrossed, unlawful trespass signage, taking of wildlife, sponsored by Representative Provenza, an act relating to game and fish, was referred to committee number 6, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Garou, Jones, and Schuler. Senator Schuler, chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 147 do pass. And with that, I would call on Senator Cooper to explain the bill.
I'm sorry, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a good chair of travel just suggested, we got House Bill 147 in front of you. Unlawful trespass signage, ticking of wildlife. Now, we've done a lot of really good trespass updates here lately. This is just an extension of that, if you will. If you remember, we covered no trespass for on private lands to access public lands on the far side. Well, this is just the other end of the street. This says that no person shall put signage up on public lands that would prevent someone from entering. And the bill on page 2 is pretty straight up. Knowingly and without authorization, post or maintain or place signs that restrict access to or use of state and federal lands for the lawful taking of wildlife. Knowingly has been defined here, means that the person has received prior notice from a peace officer that the sign is located on state or federal land. And what that means, if the game warden or the sheriff, somebody comes along and tells the person who placed the sign there that this is an improper sign, it needs to be removed, and it goes on down the road. If the person doesn't remove the sign, on the second time the sheriff or the game warden or whoever, whichever peace officer it may be, comes by, then he can enforce this. So straight up bill, not much to it. Again, it's just the other end of the road on this good trespass legislation we've done. Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, just a couple of technical questions here. So I don't know about how placing a sign someplace restricts access. I don't know how the sign being placed there restricts your access. It may tell you that you don't have access, but I don't know that it restricts it. That's just a technical question. But what happens if there's a fence there or a gate? I don't have to put a sign up there. I just lock it. That's perfectly legal because it doesn't have a sign, and that's more of a common occurrence in my area than just placing a sign up. So why would we make just putting a sign up an illegal activity but not actually locking, which actually restricts access to those public lands for lawfully taking of wildlife? And maybe that wasn't contemplated, but that's more of an issue that I have in my area, that people locking gates that are on public property than I do people that are signing them. And so was there any thought given to that, Madam Chairman?
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to pull it up and I'm just a little slow on my look at my green books today, but there's a whole section in the game and fish title that prevents someone who is intentionally trying to prevent another lawful hunter from hunting or gaining access. So I think the instance of a locked gate is already covered. This is just one area that's been a little murky because it deals with signs, but I think the locked gate is already covered.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a general question. Does this relate to county roads, private roads, city roads? Could someone please explain I guess, where are these signs being placed and how do they get authority to place them in the right of way if they in fact don't have control over the road, if that's the case? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, that question wasn't asked, but I think because of the fact that county roads, there's assessments, or excuse me, easements there, just like there would be on any other public road, that those would not be available for you to put signs up. The biggest thing is, we really don't want to interfere with the landowner's right to be able to put signs up. And that is actually talked about in little I, 3 little I at the bottom of page 2. What really this bill is just a way to kind of de-escalate issues maybe between private landowners and hunters. And just what we heard anecdotally was a lot of stories about landowners sometimes will put signs up where it's not their land. And what I found, it was kind of I thought interesting, is that I always thought GPSs were really very accurate And it sounds like unless, in fact, they've updated their GPSs and their Onyx deals, that sometimes they're off a little bit. And I think that's where some of the issues have come up. Plus, we also heard testimony that some of our ranchers don't carry GPSs or Onyx. They've had this property and they know where their lines are. They think they do. And what we find out is sometimes they're not always where they think they are. And so this bill is just a way to basically protect both the landowner and the hunter. And I think if you take a look on page 2, really the bottom line there is it's knowingly and without authorization. So if in fact a game and fish person had been called to a site because there was an issue between a landowner and a hunter, and found out that this sign was in the wrong place, please take it down. It's taken care of, the peace officers dealt with it, and then 2 weeks later, because they've got some big bull elk there, they put the sign back up to try and keep hunters out. I think this is really what this bill is trying to get to, is to try to de-escalate those issues and try to let obviously the landowners know that yes, they have a right to put a sign up where their property is private, but they also have to understand that if they find out that that is not their land, that they shouldn't just keep putting the signs up and again and again and again, chasing off people with guns or whatever else. We heard all kinds of great stories. So anyway, that's the gist of the bill.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just address that road question just a little bit. In reference to my own properties, I have access off a county road that goes on to federal lands, and further into the property it turns into private lands. I can't put a sign out there where it comes off the county road onto the federal lands. But further in on that public road, it's a BLM road, I can put a sign there where it enters into private property. On another road that comes into my properties, it comes off of federal onto federal, so I wouldn't put a sign there, but I can still put a sign further in where it is entering into my private property. And the third instance, the third road enters my private property from public property. That sign is proper, even though it is a public road up to that point. So it just depends on the situation. It just says when you're entering public property, you cannot put a sign there.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, and I think this is probably an appropriate place if it was during hunting season, but this expands the role of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department far beyond the role of policing during hunting season. So let me explain how that works. So if you go back and you read the bill, the key component here is when you get to page 2 and you get to lines 5 through 6, and it says, and this is knowingly without authorization, post or maintain or place a sign that restricts access or to, and here's the important words, use of state and federal lands on which the lawful taking of. So what that means is it's any place on state and federal where the lawful taking of wildlife is. Well, Mr. Chairman, the other part is probably appropriate for the Game and Fish Department. And that comes into where we look at that and says lawfully taking wildlife. But what this does is, so outside of hunting season, Game and Fish now has to enforce all these signs out there just because you may be able to lawfully take wildlife for 2 weeks out of the year during the hunting season. Now they're obligated to police this 365 days a year because it's potentially at 2 weeks out of the year you can take wildlife. And I don't know if that was the intent. And was there any testimony at the department that they wanted to take on that duty 365 days a year? Because the language is so broad, because it just says if you may be able to at some time. Now it becomes Game and Fish's responsibility to police that versus just in the process of taking wildlife. And so was there any discussion from the department of whether they want to take on that responsibility 365 days a year or not?
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the testimony we heard was, if you read your green books, it says no person shall, with the intent to prevent or hinder the lawful taking of any wildlife, interfere with the lawful taking of, or the process of lawfully taking of any wildlife. The concept here is this is trying to build on that to include signs. So I don't think anyone's contemplating that game and fish wardens have to go out there and patrol this. I think what this bill seeks to do is provide a mechanism to say if someone, put a sign up that is trying to restrict access to the public's right to hunt on lands that are allowed to hunt on, and that sign is incorrect and was put there with that intention to keep hunters off places where they're legally allowed to be, that they would, the landowner or the person seeking access could call law enforcement. Law enforcement would look into it and say, hey, landowner, whoever put up the sign, we need to take it down. It's inaccurate. You're trying to interfere with someone's lawful right to hunt. That person's then on notice, they take the sign down, and then hopefully the situation's over. If they refuse to take that action after the case has been investigated, then a fine would be in place. So I don't want to read too much into this. We did spend a lot of time on the knowingly, without authorization, the intent piece. But I think if you step back and look how it fits in the entire structure of our statutes, there is no duty to patrol or anything. I think you'll see this as a tool that comes up on a case-by-case basis.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To back up what the good senator just said, this is simply an extension of 23-3-405, which is already in place. And it addresses a problem that has been identified, and it brings a solution to it. We don't need to overthink this. It's a simple solution to a simple problem. And with that, I'd like to ask for the question.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you. Not to belabor the point, but I just had one more question, Madam Chairman, and that is the fine amount. So if I'm reading that correctly, it's a $1,000 fine, but it's also up to 6 months in jail. And I wondered if there was any discussion on that, because 6 months in jail seems like pretty steep for putting up a sign. Thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is where I belabored this extensively this morning. So there are 3 elements that need to be proved before that citation goes. They have to prove intent on that line 1. There has to be an intent to prevent someone from accessing lands. Second, we have a definition of knowingly, and that's where the additional language was added about the law enforcement peace officers being involved. There's a created record where someone from law enforcement said, hey, the sign's wrong, it's restricting access, lawful access, you can't have it up. So that landowner is then on notice and doesn't have authorization. This authorization piece, they'll look into whether or not they have a letter from a federal agency that's, where there was an agreement for that landowner to put up certain signs. So there are 3 hurdles that have to be met before the citation can be issued. And so I even asked, are those 3 hurdles necessary? But what we heard from landowner groups was, yes, we want all of these checks. And so it really does have to be willful, intentional, and law enforcement's visited with you and you're still like, yeah, I'm not gonna listen to that. That's when the citation comes into place. So I think there are a lot of safeguards in here. Again, this is just another tool in the toolbox to try and facilitate any issues from, or de-escalating any serious issues from arising. I think they landed on the right spot.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the question behind me here, this comes in as a low misdemeanor. That $1,000 in a year of jail, that's the maximum it can be. This will be at a prosecutor's discretion. If it's something blatant and repeated, then it can actually move up to a high misdemeanor. But the fact is, it's a low misdemeanor. This is the lowest class that's available. That's where it starts. Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, with all due respect for my colleagues, I understand the issue and I agree with what we're trying to do here. I'm just saying this far expands upon what I think the intent of the bill does. Because if we go into that section in 23-3-405 and we bring in this new, you've now expanded this beyond lawful taking of wildlife. It's not about lawful taking in wildlife now. It's just about a sign in an area that you may take lawfully. But if there's no hunting season, you can't lawfully or lawfully take wildlife. So it does say right now that if you post that, there's no hunting season, you may not even be out there trying to lawfully take wildlife. It just says if that's a permitted activity on that land, which it is, and you drive past that sign after notice, knowingly do that, you're now captured. Whether you're out there actually lawfully or unlawfully trying to take wildlife or not, it expands what is currently contemplated under the statute, Madam Chairman.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So having placed numerous no hunting, no trespassing, no fishing, no mountain biking signs in the last 40 years, 50 years on my family's property, Northeast Wyoming, and observing how some of those signs are placed by others, neighbors, or further down the road than neighbors, if you will, there certainly are private landowners who are, in my view, restricting access to lands. And I've never seen, maybe I shouldn't say I've never seen, but all of these signs, or many of these signs, say multiple things. It's not just about hunting, it's about trespassing, it's other things. So if we need to have a clarification about knowingly hunting or in the act of something, because this is under the game or the title of Game and Fish, this could also be placed inversely in Title VI. As we have in Title VI, there is notice. For trespass, you get notice, and then you start becoming liable. Well, we could do the reverse there too. So should we do it both places? We should do it in Title VI under trespass, and we can do it under this title for if it's involved with hunting or other pursuit of wildlife. So, Madam Chairman, I understand some of the concern, but I think my witness is this certainly does happen. And actually, we just purchased a piece of property, and we inherited a bunch of signs. And if this goes into effect, I'm going to have to actually go back and make sure those signs are correctly placed, because fences do not run on property lines often. And sometimes you use the most convenient place to post something. And if that is not properly placed, then I too would be restricting, and I have no intention of doing that knowingly. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 147, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Chair is in doubt. Those in favor say, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. (1413). House Bill 147 has passed the committee of whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 213.
House Bill 213 engrossed energy production inventory exemption, sponsored by Representative Burkhart, an act relating to ad valorem taxation, was referred to Committee Number 3, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report it do so with a do pass recommendation of House Bill 213. Do I have any takers on who wants to explain this bill? Maybe the good cowboy from over yonder will take the bill.
Senator Landon.
Well, Madam Chairman, when you discover 5 or 10 minutes before you're going to present a bill, that presents some challenges, but I'm happy to walk you through this little bill. It's actually an old friend. It's been around a while. I think we have, through the process of bringing this back to the sessions the last 2 or 3 years, I think we've honed in on what could be a little good bill for our consideration. What this bill does is provide for an exemption on some property taxes if you're going to store some energy equipment that will be placed somewhere else. So if you go to page 2, that's where the description lies. Property that is temporarily stored in the state before the first installation. And primarily, fellow senators, we're talking about, this came up in the world of wind power, to be honest. And some of these big production facilities were storing acres and acres of these great big wind farm implements, and the big wings that you see that come down the interstate. Some of us even traveled to another state or two a few years ago. You might remember that, because they were so successful in attracting these kinds of businesses that they took some of our Wyoming business people out of state so that they could actually store this equipment without that taxation piece. So that's what this is, folks. It allows for the storage of that equipment, and then the taxes will be paid where that equipment is actually stood up. And later on in that paragraph, it goes on to provide you with the definition. And I'd be happy to try to stand for any questions on the bill. That's the bill. Hope you'll support it.
Senator Kolb.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is a big issue in Sweetwater County, an absolutely huge issue, because where that equipment comes in, the tax isn't paid for where it's eventually going to be used at. It's been a big problem. We were trying to track sales tax and just how it was relating to projects, and you discover when you look into it that the equipment may be taken off a rail car in some other area for the purposes of, of course it's a business, they want to get the lowest sales tax. So I stand in support of this bill. I think it's a long time coming, and looking forward to any discussion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, I realize this is kind of focused on energy production, but why not maybe more broadly for mineral production? And specifically, I'm thinking about Trona. I'm just curious if that was discussed, or if anyone who has supported this bill or this effort in the past has can enlighten us on that.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I appreciate that. Obviously, Trona is not energy per se, it's a mineral. But Madam Chairman, I guess I would like to know what temporarily means. If a project starts in one community and goes to another, but the storage yard to the good former county commissioner was in that community, how long is temporarily? And quite honestly, Madam Chairman, I guess I'm a little concerned. I'm watching the price of some things right now, and I'm going to stock up a whole bunch of materials when they reach a certain point that I may not use for 3 or 4 years, and I may have properties in more than one county. So maybe other industries might be, besides the energy industry, including agriculture, might have some interest and some use for this as well. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Cooper.
Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chairman. To speak a little bit to what the senator from the Rock Springs area said, when an energy company is bringing this kind of equipment in, they buy in volume on a bigger project. Maybe I've been involved with projects where we went out and we bought $150 million worth of equipment, and we brought most of that equipment into Wyoming. Had it stored here because that's where the base of the company was. And then the equipment was distributed from the yard here. But the sales tax was all paid here in Wyoming. And that's the important thing. It'll go to the proper county, but if that equipment in a year or two goes out to North Dakota or somewhere, that sales tax has already been paid in Wyoming. And this is a big thing, a really big thing.
Senator Boner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to make sure I understand the impact of the bill, especially, sometimes you'll have a storage facility in one county, but the actual project, the actual impact is in a different county. Just wondering what the impact would be on sales tax. Say you have a storage facility in one county, but the project's in a different one. Is that going to shift sales tax from county to county and frankly have an impact on the county where all the work is actually being accomplished? Wondering if we're shifting sales tax among counties here. Just want to make sure I understand that part of it.
We'll go Senator Iden and Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the good senator from Converse County, that question came up in committee today, and I was wondering about that as well. We were talking more about state to state potentially, but so if the tax is the same from county to county, there's no change. If it's more, I'm not sure to answer that question on county to county. From state to state, they would charge that, they would pick up that additional tax effectively. So that's a little confusing. And the rest of the bill, that there was a lot of discussion there as well on the good senator from Laramie County. It's a little bit targeted here to energy, and the Department of Revenue chimed in on that. Construction in progress. How do you define, who's in the energy business and who isn't as far as who gets this exemption? So I don't know if that helps much, but that was some of the discussion that was happened today. Thank you.
Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I do remember this old friend, and I've had some concerns in the past, and I appreciate the fact that a lot of them are addressed, but I don't know if they're fully addressed. And so I have a couple of questions about how things would actually play out for the proponents. The first kind of gets back to the length of time concept, but as I understand it, imagine we're putting up 100 wind turbines. Those wind turbines have a significant value. We know where they're going to go. We bring those turbines, all of the components, and we lay them down in Wyoming, so they're resting, but they're not producing any power. They would be tax-free from a property tax standpoint, but we might have received, hopefully we receive sales and use tax associated with it. But while they're sitting there, before they're put to beneficial use, they would be property tax-free, so that could be $1 billion of asset sitting there untaxed. And then it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, proponents, that once they are turned on and are put to beneficial use, so put up, they would now go into a property taxation inventory. So while they're resting, no property taxation. Once they're put into beneficial use, they would be. But we don't know how long they would potentially be resting. So I think that's what's effectively happening. And when we talked about this before, it came through a committee I served on at one point. Turbines, pipeline was another big potential use where you have billions of dollars worth of pipeline that again would be resting potentially for a couple of years, would be paying no property tax as it's there lying at rest. But theoretically, the property taxation would come into play the moment it was turned on. So if I'm understanding that right, and that's still how this is, a couple of questions. The first is, what if it's redirected? So there's an initial intent for the pipeline arbitrarily, wind turbines more likely for this to play out. There is an intended use of deployment in our state, and then they effectively get redeployed or not deployed at some later point. There's perhaps a 2-year time period where there was no taxation, and then they're not put to beneficial use. Is there a way to hook back and take the property tax that we would have been due Or how would that be managed if it ended up moving to another state, we'll say. The second question that I have with regard to how this plays out comes down to the equity of business, which I think was hinted at earlier, but was a concern that I had previously. This is effectively a significant property tax reduction for pre-deployment of very expensive equipment for one industrial sector. If we wanted to do that, why wouldn't we be doing it for everyone? Why wouldn't we be doing it for information technology, as an example? If this is a good policy and I'm buying billions of dollars worth of server equipment before I flip the switch, why don't I also get it? Because there's plenty of billion-dollar industries out there. We're basically saying, energy sector, we're going to give you a massive property tax break. Other sectors, not so much. So there's an inequity problem, and I think that would be a concern. It was a concern when I saw this a few years ago. So, Madam Chairman, those are the concerns. First of all, do I have it right? I think I do, based on how it works. Second of all, what's the timeline? And then I've got a couple of additional questions, as you know.
Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess I got a few basic questions to bring her the bill. It would appear from the way the text reads, and you can correct me if it's incorrect, it appears that you pay the tax at the place of installation. That is what this is doing. Installation does not mean functionality. It means it's been affixed in place. The way I'm reading this, it looks like it has nothing to do with it running. It merely means that it's been affixed. It doesn't say a running installation, as I'm trying to understand the text of the bill. So I guess a clarification about, is it in fact just at the place of installation is where the tax paid, the county, or well, I mean, wherever the locality is and the sales tax in effect when that happens? And also, does it have to be functional, or can it just be affixed? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm trying to catch up on all this. Can someone tell me, maybe I'm wrong, does this allow wind producers to store turbines without putting them in operation and still get their federal subsidy? I'm fuzzy on that. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Yes to my friend from Fremont County. That's absolutely the kind of business operation that we visited at a state south of here, which had attracted a couple of our Wyoming business owners. They did very well down there, and I'm glad to say they're back home. But to answer my good friend from just over the hill, I think the language on lines 3 and 4 on page 2 actually tighten that up pretty well. We're talking about out-of-state placement. And this says that the property, the energy equipment, if Wyoming sales or use tax is paid on the property in the county where it will be installed. So that doesn't say anything about out-of-state. So I think it's covered. You know, I can't argue with you that this may be good tax policy all the way around. I would say that we probably need to walk before we run. This one is pretty tightly written, simply for energy production materials. I'm sure that we can consider other things as we go along if this proves to be the economic driver that some of us thought it could be, 2 or 3 years ago. I apologize that I don't have the answer of the installation piece that the senator from Sweetwater County asked. That's because I just learned of this bill 10 minutes ago. But I think we can probably chase down a couple of these things, and I'd be glad to do so. I want to thank the members of the Minerals and Economic Development Committee for jumping in and helping us to remember some of the things that this does. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Boner.
Madam Chairman, I'm still kind of wondering if I could get an answer to my question. My concern here is that you, right now, the way I understand it, is that you pay the sales tax for the store property where the property is installed. So if we pass this bill, well, that shift, instead the county where all the actual work is happening won't get any sales tax based off that industrial activity that has a massive impact on public services. Instead of we shifting that perhaps to a different county where the equipment's just kind of sitting there. I really need an answer to that question.
Senator Anderson.
Madam Chairman, I may be able to help with that. This has a huge history in Wyoming. Goes back to pipelines for oil field. And in the past, we had laydown yards where those pipes would be stored because they were in short supply and they'd have to wait till they got all of them. This goes back 30, 40 years when some of those pipeline guys were in the legislature. Everybody was after, where are we going to pay the sales tax and the property tax? The sales tax is paid when you take delivery. So if I buy pipe from the senator from Cheyenne and I take delivery at X point, that's where I pay the sales tax. Now, we had a problem with that because we had a pipeline that paid the sales tax in South Dakota. And they said they got around that because there was some coding went on in that state. And that came to this legislature also because there's so many dollars involved with the thing. So this goes back that far. Then we started in with these windmills, and they had to buy the property ahead of time to meet schedules. But then they had to have a place to lay them down because they didn't know exactly where they were going to put them. So then that started with the windmills again. Where are they going to lay them down and where? So there's two things going on here. When am I going to pay the sales tax and where am I going to pay the property tax? So the sales tax is kind of set. It's where you take delivery from the manufacturer. Now that's a complicated issue also and can be held up in court for some time, as we know now, a few years. The property tax is what we're talking about here, and that is where you're going to install it. That's where you're going to pay the property tax. And we're trying to give them a break on the property tax where they're laying it down, and only where they use it will they start paying the property tax. So two different issues, complicated issues. No wonder we're confused here on the floor because this has been going on for decades about where we pay these taxes. But that's kind of how it lays out right now. And if we had an attorney in here, they'd probably tell you 2 or 3 different scenarios also. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so when I'm reading this, and and I appreciate that explanation, but I'm still struggling with what exactly we're doing. And so one of the things I have a question here is that somebody can tell me when it is, because we bring in energy production equipment means any specialized equipment designed specifically for the use in the production of energy, and it has a whole list of all the different sources. Who determines what specialized equipment is? Is that a side boom for laying pipelines? Is it the big cranes that stand up the transmission towers? Is it the equipment that strings the line? Who determines what specialized equipment is? And is there, to my colleague, is there a definition of what constitutes specialized equipment? Because, Madam Chairman, I would argue if I just modify my D7 bulldozer for a right-of-way, that's specialized equipment. I may just put a wing on it. So that's a question I have on this. What equipment are we specifically exempting, and who determines that?
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hopefully I can take us closer to home on this one. Going back to Converse County, I wanted to just expound a little bit on what the former chairman of Minerals just told us, which I'm really grateful for that background. The issue is, if we've got a zone up there, let's say in Natrona County, where we can lay down a whole bunch of these blades, for example, or a whole bunch of pipe, and we're going to store it there, knowing that all of that activity over behind my good friend's house in Converse County, that's where it ultimately is going to end up. But we bought it in bulk, and we're not going to install it for quite some time. This bill gives a little bit of a break so that Natrona County doesn't continue the taxation as that pipe or that blade is laying on the ground. When we take it over to my good friend's back door and put that wind farm up, that's when the taxation piece kicks in and Converse County would get the taxation. The sales and use tax already having been paid, as the former chairman pointed out. So that's that piece. Regarding the equipment, the Department of Revenue knows exactly what kind of equipment we're talking about. So I hope that helps. We can continue to work this, and I'll be glad to chase questions and look forward to the conversation as we go along.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you. I've been reading about personal property tax for years, and I do find it fascinating. I'm really happy we're having such big discussions on it, but I think this kind of feeds into that whole discussion of why it's such a bizarre tax. It's a difficult one to administer. But the theory behind it is that if you're a business and you have this equipment, we're going to tax it because it's generating revenue for you. And so for your small businesses, that's anything. I work in an office. In theory, I should be putting every stapler, every pencil holder, pieces of artwork on the wall. Those all help me generate revenue in my business, right? So that's the theory behind this, is this large equipment will help generate revenue, and that's a piece of it. This is the way we're going to try and capture some of that activity, some revenue from that activity. So this is the break that we're trying to achieve, right? Is it hasn't been put to that use yet. We haven't installed it. Maybe I bought the stapler, but I haven't brought it to the office yet. Like, that's kind of the theory behind it. So I just want to highlight, this is why this tax is really tricky. Wyoming's a self-reporting state. So for small businesses, we're not worried about my stapler, but for the larger industries where this equipment is very expensive, we are worried about it. And then the question of how this is defined, I think that this would be well within the Department of Revenue's rulemaking authority in their rules to define just exactly what is specialized. Because I think we can all agree that a stapler can be used for multiple purposes, but a large wind blade, for example, can't. That's got one purpose, that helps generate energy production. So just a couple thoughts, but this is a goofy tax.
Senator Case.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. I think it's not a good idea to trivialize this tax and compare wind towers and turbines to staplers. So, a lot of these companies, they don't own the land underneath. There's no real property to tax. This is the property tax that we get. And it's not the same as a stapler. And I think it's important to remember, who knows what's going on in your county? I'll tell you who knows, your county assessor. They're the ones that know when this equipment is laid down, where it goes, and when it's put back up. Folks down in Cheyenne at the Department of Revenue, they may not know what's moving on in the big chessboard that's Wyoming, and they have limited staff. So that's a reason to think about who's actually doing this taxation, and that's the subject for another day. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Senator Ellis.
And Madam Chair, just to apologize if anyone thought I was trying to trivialize the stapler to the wind. I'm just trying to make the point that, once you affix things to your home, for example, they become part of your home, they become part of your valuation. So I think there's some of that element too in this analysis of, are these just items that are there versus, things that we traditionally think of as permanent fixtures in buildings, and those are taxed differently once you affix something. So I just think there's a lot of things to consider, and I mean it in the grand scale that this tax covers all of that activity. And so please, want to apologize. I certainly don't mean to trivialize it. These are big, big dollars.
All those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 213, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. No. Oh, the chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please stand. Those opposed, please stand. It's 14-10, House Bill 213 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 5.
House Bill 5 engrossed, voter registry list, voter ID, and absentee ballots, sponsored by the Corporations Committee. Act relating to elections. Was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. No, Senator Barlow. Senator Case, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Case?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a do pass recommendation on House Bill 5, voter registry list, voter ID, and absentee ballots. And there is a standing committee amendment. I'd ask that it be read in at this time.
House Bill 5's Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 3, line 22, delete.
Madam Chairwoman, I have one regret, and that's that I didn't assign this to another committee member this morning. So I really am sorry that I didn't do that. And if there are any volunteers, I'd be happy to take them on. But Madam Chairwoman, this deals with the issue that we had coming about. For many years, you could request a list of folks that have asked for an absentee ballot during the campaign season. And you could check every week to see if they returned their ballot or not. And candidates use that to target mailings to people that have requested absentee ballots. That's been the standard practice in Wyoming for a long, long, long time. The previous Secretary of State looked at the statutes and interpreted that differently and said that that was violating the privacy and laws with respect to privacy. And so that practice was cut off, but some of our counties went ahead and did it anyway. So it's a little bit unclear. Our new Secretary of State concurs with the previous practice, Madam Chairwoman. But this is a bill that came out of your interim Corporations Committee and is designed to remedy that and make it clear that these requests, who can request a ballot, is not a confidential issue. And if I can use an analogy, Madam Chairwoman, absolutely, our Constitution guarantees private ballots. Your right to vote and issue a ballot that no one else knows about is guaranteed by the Constitution. But the Constitution doesn't say that we can't know if you voted or not. For example, I can go to the polls and I can watch my neighbor go and fill out a ballot and put it in the machine. I know he voted. That's not protected. Just like it shouldn't be protected in terms of returning an absentee ballot. It's the same concept, Madam Chairwoman. You know, and this bill goes in and it talks about something called the registry list, and it's kind of convoluted. I will give you that the existing statute is convoluted. The heart of it is on page 2, 22-113, and it's talking about what's confidential and what's not confidential. And remember, in Wyoming, we have an extremely good system of verifying voter identity when they register. When you register to vote, it's always been the practice in Wyoming that you have to produce extensive documentation about that. Address, forms of ID, other information. That's always been the case, Madam Chairwoman. Even before we passed the requirement to show ID at the polls, that was previously still the case. The purpose of showing ID at the polls, Madam Chairwoman, is to verify that you're the person that's registered. It's actually a lesser standard than the voter ID list. But all that stuff you submit when you register to prove who you are, that is confidential information. Might be your driver's license number, might be your home address, it might be other information. And that needs to be confidential because if that were publicly available, Madam Chairwoman, you could be used for identity theft if you think about it. So what the state does is when we request the list of people that have received an absentee ballot, they give a unique identifying number. And they give it, and they don't provide any other information, just a simple list of information about the voter. It does include the address, it includes the party, it includes the precinct and the district. And it includes this number that the state generates. It's not a special number, it's not your own number, it's a number that's used administratively. The whole gist of this is to make this public and clear that it can be requested. And so that's the whole purpose of the bill. Now, we had a tortured experience trying to amend the bill to make it perfectly clear, and I want to thank the Secretary of State's office. I want to thank the General Counsel of the Secretary of State's office, who came up with a simple amendment, spent some time on it, and brought it to the committee, and that is exactly what your standing committee is, standing committee amendment is. And what the standing committee amendment does, Mr. You're raising your finger at me. Am I in trouble? Has it been read in?
It's been read in, but I think you just need to move it.
I need to move it. I move the standing committee amendment to House Bill 5. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. A good job. So in 22-3-108, it's called the official registry list information. And it's on page 3 of your bill. In our bill, you see the A part of that portion of the statute, but there's a B part. The A part says, the official registry list shall contain at least the following information on each registered voter. So this is the list that this is the information you can actually get. Madam Chairwoman, there's a B part that wasn't in the bill. The B part is a list of things that are may. And so what the purpose of the standing committee amendment, and it's pretty smart thinking if you want my opinion, it has this registration information. And what it's doing is moving it from making sure that it's going to be a shall. And it simplifies the language. In the bill, it says information relating to registration status. The Secretary of State's office suggested we substitute that for date of registration. It's all there. But then there is this may portion where that information is repeated. And what the repealer does, WS 22-3-108B Romanet 3 is repealed. It goes in further into statute and repeals where it's a may. So it moves from being a may, moves up to be a shall. So you can request, and it's public information, the registration data about voters, where they live, this unique identifying number, and if they've requested an absentee ballot. That's the bill, Madam Chairwoman. It really puts us back to where we were before, the relatively recent interpretation by the Secretary of State's office. It puts it to practice that we've always had. And it is indeed the way that our current Secretary of State interprets the law. We're all in agreement on that. This is really just to prevent, in the future, a misinterpretation. Happy to answer any questions if I can. Happy to call for the question on the amendment.
Questions on the amendment? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 5, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. The motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 5 has passed. We are back on the bill. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one more question. So looking at the list of what's on there, one of them is Romanet 7, the elector's Wyoming driver's license number. But it says if the elector has no driver's license, then one of the following unique identifying numbers, either the last 4 digits of the social security number, or if the elector has no social security number, a unique identifying number generated by the state. So I'm wondering, with the addition of the unique identifying number, if it would make sense then just to do away with the driver's license number and just have that unique identifying number. I was wondering if the committee discussed that as they work this bill.
Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, in response to that, no, it would not make sense to do that. The driver's license is something that you use to identify yourself. The unique identifying number is simply, it's a federal requirement. It's simply used in the voting context so that you can track a voter from
one county to another if they move or something like that, and identify where that voter is voting, has to do with protecting the purity of the election. So they serve different purposes, and I would urge us to not try to change that.
Senator Kuhn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just take a moment to point out, if you don't have a valid Wyoming driver's license, you can still go to the DMV and get a valid Wyoming identification card. So, and it works just like a driver's license, unless you try to operate a vehicle, then it might be a problem. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 5, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? House Bill 5 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 86.
House Bill 86 engrossed, disclosure of private cryptographic keys, sponsored by the Blockchain Committee, an act relating to digital assets. It was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Case?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a do-pass recommendation on House Bill 86, disclosure of private cryptographic keys. I love saying the word cryptographic. It's kind of a cool, sounds almost nasty if you want my opinion. But anyway, for an explanation of the bill, I would yield to a member of the Blockchain Task Force, Senator Rothfuss.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, House Bill 86 is a product of the Select Committee on Blockchain, Financial Technology, and Digital Innovation Technology from the interim. It's about disclosure of private cryptographic keys. I'm going to kind of try to thread the needle in terms of how in-depth I'm going to go talking about private and public keys. I'm happy to go as deep as anybody wants, but in the interest of time, it's not going to be that deep. So there's two concepts in a private public key relationship, which we use for all of our banking, for blockchain transactions, for most transactions. And it comes down to a public key, which you disclose readily. You can think of that as, for example, your bank account routing number, which you can give out, but nobody has control just by having that information. And then you've got the private key side, which is kind of the equivalent of maybe your PIN number and your signature authority, so that you have control of what that account does. So one is private, that gives you control of the asset. The other is public, it allows people to route to that asset. You need them both to engage in a transaction. The private part is the important part in terms of controlling the digital asset. Madam Chairman, the legislation goes into the Digital Asset Act and talks about the fact that that private key is not going to be subject to compelled disclosure. That's what you have at the bottom of page 1 and on to 2, that no person shall be compelled to produce a private key or make a private key known to any other person in any civil, administrative, legislative, or other proceeding in the state that relates to a digital asset, digital identity, or other interest or right. And then the key provision that provides a little exception language is on lines 5 through 8 of page 2. Unless a public key is unavailable or unable to disclose the requisite information with respect to the digital asset, digital identity, or other interest or right. The B paragraph goes on to say that nothing about this shall be interpreted to prohibit the compulsion to disclose the digital assets itself or to disclose information about those digital assets. So, Madam Chairman, the concept there is you can compel all you want about information. Public keys should provide sufficient information, and only on the occasion that that public key doesn't give you enough information could you ever compel disclosure of the private key. So it's protecting the privacy of that. And Madam Chairman, this again is something innovative in trying to position us as a strong privacy state, the strongest in the country, first of its kind, and it's important that we have that position. We worked this over the last couple of interims, actually, through the Select Committee, and worked with stakeholders that value this type of privacy protection. We can go into details about how the public and private key could be used. But with that, Madam Chairman, I'd ask that the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 be read in.
House Bill 86, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to corrected engrossed copy, page 1, line 13, after.
Madam Chairman, I move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 86 and ask the body's favorable consideration. Madam Chairman, this amendment reverses a House amendment that was put on that actually takes it from being a key privacy protection that's at the cutting edge, best in the country in the class, to the worst in the country in the class, because it provides explicit opportunities and avenues for disclosure of the private key. And honestly, we would not want this bill. The bill goes from being a very good bill to a horrible bill that I would urge you all to vote against. So it's really important that we respect the work of the Select Committee, pass the Standing Committee Amendment number 1, and get it back to the original Select Committee position. So if there's any questions on the amendment, I'd be happy to answer them. What it does is remove the unless otherwise directed after in-camera review by the court, and includes a criminal allowance as well on page 2. After civil, it inserts criminal, administrative, legislative, or other affairs. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but if there are none, I'd call for the question on Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
All right. All those in favor of Senator Rothfuss's motion to adopt Standing Committee Member 1 to House Bill 86, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion to adopt Standing Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 86 has passed. We are back on the bill.
And Madam Chairman, as I said, I'm happy to go into any depth that anybody wants. Oh, I didn't mention the third page. I guess it's important to note that while it looks like there's a new definition here, when you look at the repealer is identical language to the definition that would go into 101. We're just moving it. So there's nothing really new that happens on page 3. It's a movement so that the definition is applicable to the language in this act regarding private key. I'll stop there and see if there is more interest in more detail, Madam Chairman.
All right, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 86, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? House Bill 86 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 93.
House Bill 93 engrossed, the omnibus water bill construction, sponsored by the Water Committee, an act relating to water development projects. It was referred to Committee number 5, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Kolb. Senator Steinmetz, chairman. Was re-referred to Committee number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, and Salazar. Excused, Senators Kinski and Nethercott. Senator Kinski, chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 93 do pass, and there is a Standing Committee amendment. I'd ask it be read in at this time.
House Bill 93, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 11, delete.
Madam Chairman, I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 93 so that it has been moved, and then I would call on Senator French to explain this good little bill.
Senator French.
I'm the only thing that stands between you going home or staying here. Just letting you know that. So, there you go. So, House Bill number 93 is 53 pages long. So I will read it verbatim. So, quickly here at the start, I'll just a little bit here. An act relating to water development projects authorizing construction of designated water projects, describing projects, specifying terms and conditions. The gist of the bill is the gray paper that was passed out to everybody. And hopefully everybody has it. And along the, along the top, it will tell the project, the location, water development, account 1, 2, 3, the terms of it, and then a description on your far right. So I'll go through these real quick. At the top of your page, cloud seeding, Medicine Bow, and Sierra Madre Mountain ranges. Okay, you'll see their location, Albany and Carbon counties. You'll see next to that, Water Development Account 1, $825,000. And then you go to your far right for snowpack augmentation. Same on the next one down, cloud seeding, Wind River and Sierra Madre Mountains, Fremont, Sublette, and Carbon counties, $301,000 snowpack. And a quick note on this, with the mega drought on the Colorado River, this is extremely important to hopefully get more water to defend our position on this big interstate compact that we got going on. So next down, Happy Valley Water Transmission and Storage, Lincoln County, $308,000. Pipeline, Sheridan Northeast Transmission Main Extension, Sheridan County, $213,060 for pipelines. South End Water Users Pipeline, Bighorn County, $307,800 for pipelines. Next down, you go through, you'll see a number of projects. I'm getting tired, folks, I'm sorry. Natrona County, $477,040 for water control structure. Enterprise lateral, Fremont County, $626,400. Pipelines, Goshen County, eastern side of the state, $149,600. Materials on the grant. And I'll back up just a little bit on where they're like up there on the first part, Happy Valley Water Transmission and Storage. You'll see there under terms, 67G, 67%. What that means is 67% of it is a grant. The rest is up to you. So we'll go down through my part of the world, Heart Mountain Irrigation District, $1,164,000 to replace a lateral that's leaking and put it into pipe. Interstate Irrigation District, Sweetwater County, $3,226,200. Lakeview, Park County, again, $1,475,000. Midvale, Fremont County, $2,250,000. Next down, different projects. In the next section is a lot of time extensions. They just couldn't flat get their project up and running. So they asked for time extensions. Most of them 2 years, some 1 year. So you further down, you go, Glen Rock Transmission Pipeline, a time extension. You'll see a number of those. Cottonwood Irrigation District Transmission Pipeline, $979,910. Lincoln County, Bighorn County, $651. Shoshone Irrigation District, Park County, $89,000. Then you get down into the totals. Under our Senate File 96, our Omnibus Water Bill Planning, in your first column, $4,341,820. And this construction bill, House Bill 93, the part, 10,824,940 for a total of 15,166,760. Next over, same thing for your totals, for a grand total over there of $30,568,910. And as you can see, there's pretty much a project everywhere in the state, whether it's for municipal or ag. And my argument, if you do anything that helps ag, they come to town and spend their money. So these are statewide projects, so I would encourage your adoption of this.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And we already have had the amendment moved, so I'll go ahead and explain the amendment now if there are no questions on the bill. What we've done in the Ag Committee is we had, if you remember correctly, we had the state engineer's budget coming back off of the general fund. That has been stripped out in both the budget and the planning bill that we passed over to the House. So we went ahead and just added that back in the construction bill to put a little belt and suspenders on what we're doing in the Senate position. The other thing that we had in our planning bill was we had taken $50 million and put it in our dams and reservoirs account. That too was taken out. And so we went ahead and added $75 million in this bill for a replacement of that, so that we will have a room to negotiate with our friends down the hallway and have a good discussion about how serious we are about our water projects here in the Senate. With that, Madam Chairman, I would stand for questions on the amendment or call for the question.
Microphone. Your own microphone.
Oh, better? All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to, wait, wrong one. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion to adopt the standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 93, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 93 has passed. We are back on the bill. Senator Anderson.
Madam Chairman, there's a standing committee amendment number 2. Could I have that read in now?
House Bill 93, Standing Committee Amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, page 53 after line 2, delete.
Madam Chairman, I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 2 to House Bill 93. What we did in the Appropriations Committee is we cut half of that administration. It had 49,906. We cut it to 24,953 because it's moving to the general file to give the water board more room to fund water projects. And that's all we did. Thank you.
Any question? All right. All those in favor of Senator Anderson's motion to adopt this is a committee of the whole? Standing committee, sorry, Standing Committee Amendment 2 to House Bill 93, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 2 to House Bill 93 has passed. We are back on the bill.
Question.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question's on the fiscal note. It says 50 million from the general fund, the water development 3. Do we normally take that much money out of our general fund for these water bills? I know a lot of money moves through these water bills, but that seems like a lot.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And based on Standing Committee Amendment number 1, I would be under the impression that it's moved from 50 million to plus an additional 45 million. So we should be around 90-ish million, somewhere in that ballpark, I think, if I'm understanding that right.
Senator French?
Yeah, I might be able to muddy the waters here. Well, I didn't mean that like that. But during our joint meetings with the Wyoming Water Development Commission and the Select Water Committee, we discussed this, and we felt that fund was getting so low that we would put 50 million in there. And what's happened, when the House looked at it, they said, no, you only need $15 million. So they cut it way back. Then they settled on 30. And we've proposed the 75. So when they get together and hash it out, it comes back to where it started from the joint committee. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, in further answer to the question, we only do this sort of thing when there's a good surplus to be had. And it's a sensible thing to do. Build up your funding in your water program so that you have a steady program going on. And I've even seen it go the other way when we were in real financial trouble. So I think it's a sound way to set some money aside for the future, but we have historically done this under the kind of circumstances we have right now, Madam Chairman.
President Driscoll.
Thank you. And I'll follow through just a little on that. Water account 3 is construction account. That's where we build our stuff out. It's kind of the last one that gets used. And it's been used exactly for that. You'd have to look back and look, but I'm guessing that account has had at least what's been added to it, if not more, taken from it in bad times, because it tends to be a pot when we get really in trouble. We go back to these accounts that are an invalid and we take money back out of them. It's a good place to have the money, and it does good things, Mr. Chairman, when we're in good times and it works. That's what's built a lot of our great projects around the state through the years, but it also has been the savior when we're dead broke and up against it. We go back to those accounts and we pull some money back out of them. We tried an accounting a few years back. I'm not sure what it is, but I can tell you that account has not been a net benefactor through the years. It generally gets money clawed back on a pretty steady basis. I'm in favor of putting it there. If you're gonna put some funds away at a place that you can get to, that potentially do good if you have continued good times, but are there to save you in bad times, this is a good route.
Senator Beitman.
One last question, Madam Chairwoman, before we leave town. The cloud seeding, do we have science that says that it actually works? Or is it more like water witching and it makes us feel good and hopefully it works? But can we get for second reading, can we get some science data that shows that cloud seeding actually works? Because we're spending a lot of money on it year over year, and I just would like to know if it actually works.
Senator Hicks.
Madam, the question's not whether it works. Question is it cost effective when it works? And so it is a very complicated answer. So it all depends on how much moisture is in the atmosphere, so how many seedable events you have. Madam Chairman, anything from on a drought year, it may only be 1 or 2% effective. On a good wet year, it may be 7 or 8 or 9%, but then you extrapolate those numbers across the entire mountain range of the Snowy Range and the Sierra Madres. Based on all the estimates, we've contracted with NCAR and a number of experts. It does generate water. The question is it a cost-effective methodology for generating water? And that all depends on who's the end users and how much they're paying for it, Madam Chairman. But I can send my colleague quite a number of studies that have been done on it, and I'll leave it up to his interpretation as to whether he thinks it's cost effective or not.
Senator French and then Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to further explain that a little bit, I believe it was last year, or maybe the year before, we authorized spending up to, I believe it was $500,000 to study and see the benefit of it. Because I had the very question, is that, are we getting our money's worth here? You know, so I want to know just how well this is panning out.
Senator Barlow, and then Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I appreciate the range of 2 to 7%. I think that would mean increased snowpack. My question is it actually changing the water cycle? Or is it just taking the water cycle that would be falling somewhere else and placing it on top of a certain place? I've been in not the mega drought that's talked about, I've been in a mini drought. And what I want to know is this actually, why shouldn't there be a provision that, hey, if there's a drought in another part of the state, a real drought, why wouldn't we actually deploy this if it is so beneficial? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for the record, I'm a cloud seeding skeptic as well in this. And we haven't seen any data on this, you know, and on another note, I was the no vote on increasing that 30 million to 75 million. It just seems like we're throwing arbitrary dollars around here just because it's a good year. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Cooper.
In response to the good senator's comment, I think cloud seeding is a lot like a rain dance. It depends a lot on timing. Thank you.
Senator Barlow.
Madam Chairman, I look forward to the lessons from the good senator.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you. Just to bring us all home, I will try to get you some more information on cloud seeding before second reading. And with that, I'd call for the question.
All right, all those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 93, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? House Bill 93 has passed the committee of the whole. Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, may I have the privilege of the floor for a minute?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I won't hold you for long, fellow senators, but I just wanted to reminisce with you for one moment. Senator French did a great job of driving the omnibus this afternoon, but I have to reflect back to the days when it was driven by another Hall of Fame senator from the Bighorn Basin, who was one of the primary architects of why we do water the way we do it here in the Wyoming legislature. We lost that great senator this year, Jerry Geis. And I remember the last time that Senator Geis drove the omnibus full of all of those water projects, and we gave him a standing ovation. And so here's to you, Senator Geis. We miss you, and thanks for all you did.
Hear, hear.
Senator Hicks. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairman, is there something that somebody's waiting for me to say? Okay. Madam Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. You have heard the motion. Oh, wait, I already did that. Motion carried.
Yay.
Reading clerk, read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had on considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 160 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 79 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 57 do pass amended. House Bill 7 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 15 do pass. House Bill 147 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 213 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 5 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 86 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 93 engrossed, do pass amended. Senator Brennan, Chairman.
Senator Brennan.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the Committee of Whole report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Report has been adopted. Committee reports.
February 9, 2023, Mr. President, your Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 229 engrossed, electronic payment of sales and use taxes, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. We have a note that came from the leader on the other side that says his committees are taking up Senate committee bills and they're working till noon Friday. So stand at ease that they're actually working on our stuff. It's coming through. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, may I have the privilege of the floor?
You may.
Mr. President, I would ask the members of the Senate over the next few days, take a look at House Bill 177, expulsion for possession of a deadly weapon. And, Mr. Chairman, the reason I ask that is it died on Committee of the Whole over in the House and then was amended into Senate File 48, which was Education Suspension and Expulsion Model Policy. And we'll have to take this up on Monday on a concurrence. I'm going to ask you to use your own judgment. There's two issues. One, the bill that was put in relates to expelling children who bring a deadly weapon to schools. We haven't debated that particular issue. Is it a good idea? And the second is, do we want to tolerate the precedent of House bills that never got heard in Committee of the Whole because they ran out of time? Should they be amended into Senate files? And I ask you to think about that over the weekend. We'll deal with it on Monday.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Signing of enrolled acts. We're up to enrolled act number 1. Read clerk will read that.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 1, being Original Senate File 2, an act relating to telecommunications.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 1, being original Senate File 2. I have so signed. Enrolled Act number 2.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 2, being Original Senate File 4, an act relating to workers' compensation.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 2, original being Senate File 4. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 3.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 3, being Original Senate File 23, an act relating to courts.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 3, originally being Senate File 23. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 4.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 4, being Original Senate File 77, an act relating to city, county, state, and local powers.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 4, originally being Senate File 77. I have so signed. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stands adjourned till 10 a.m. on Monday, February 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Announcement. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs will meet Monday, February 13th upon adjournment in Capitol Extension Room W2N online to consider House Bill 44, Road and Bridge Construction, Alternative Contracting, House Bill 239, Vehicle Idling Decriminalization, House Bill 154, Permanent Vehicle Registration.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Ag, Water Resources, and Public Lands Committee will meet at 4:30 today to consider House Bill 21, State Lands Use of Land Qualification Requirements, and House Bill 22, State Land Lease Deficiency Cure Process. That'll be in room 2 in the connector.
Thank you. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, your favorite committee, will meet Monday morning, bright and early, 7 a.m. to hear House Bill 81, Hospital Supplement Payment and Statutory Fix, House Bill 119, Medical Prescriptions Off-Label Purposes, House Bill 65, 988, Suicide Prevention, House Bill 127, Healthcare Facilities and Clergy. And I would remind you, Senate, next Wednesday at noon, we will be having an educational meeting in room 6 in the connector talking about fentanyl. And 2 questions I was asked, no, there will not be free samples.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, will meet Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. Committee members, note the time, 8:30 a.m. downstairs in room W110 to deal with House Bill 175, extended absence state fair events, excused absence state fair events.
Thank you. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 9, Minerals, will meet upon the noon recess Monday, February 13th to hear House Bill 190, Wyoming Value Added Energy and Industrial Plan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, your number 1 committee will also be meeting at 8 a.m. on Monday morning when we get back to take up House Bill 145, Disclosure of Sensitive Information Law Enforcement, House Bill 96, Engrossed Transfer on Death Deed Insurance Coverage, and House Bill 90, Engrossed Sex Offender Registration Requirements, 8 o'clock, W4 downstairs.
One last order of business. Senator Barlow. We have a birthday tomorrow. That would be Senator Cooper. I know he didn't want me to do it, but we're doing it anyway. To you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cooper. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you all. That's special. I'll be 70 years old tomorrow. And for those of you who are a little younger in here, I'd remind you, it doesn't take long to spend a lifetime. Thank you.
Hey, I didn't out you on the years, even though I knew them, so there. So that concludes our business. Everybody, safe travels. Have a great weekend. Really appreciate, this is a reward for what you folks have done. Everybody's worked good together. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just remind the note that we got from the speaker down there, but I would still coordinate your committee bills. If there's going to be a Senate sponsor on there, make sure that that's well coordinated with your House counterparts, those committee chairmen. We don't want to leave any expectation that we're not going to do our job in the Senate. And so make sure that if there is a Senate file up in those committees and it's a committee bill, that you committee chairmen are communicating with your counterpart to make sure that this thing's going to come off, that they do or do not need you there to testify on the bill. So let's just make sure that we're working closely with our colleagues down there and we don't hit a hiccup because we've done, you guys, not me, You guys have done all the good work out here. The committee chairmen have done a stellar job of getting these bills cranked out and debating them and getting them passed or whatever the final disposition is, Mr. Chairman. But please, committee chairman, contact your House committee chairman on any committee bills that will be up Senate files tomorrow in the House.
You need to really watch, because there's 100 files sitting over there, and if you got stuff you want, and this particularly for the younger folks, the only way your stuff gets up the list is you go see the speaker and you go see the majority floor leader and you ask them to move those bills for you, and it's important. There's nothing worse than to have your bill die on the vine and never got a hearing. So we're not putting undue pressure on them, but they need to be timely. We're gonna get worked through every House file if they ask you about it. Other than a handful that aren't coming out, almost every House file is going to get heard on this side. So don't do a rumor that we took days off and we killed their files, because we have not. So really, really appreciate you folks. I say it's a big reward for working as hard as you have and as efficiently as you have. We had good debates. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Have a great weekend, everybody.